Hi, welcome to our webinar. We're so glad to have you. My name is Bill Edmonds. I'm the owner of TAB, the Alternative Board in the Midlands, and also North Star Leadership Solutions. Today, I'm delighted to have my colleague and friend, Dr. Steve Cloud, come and present a timely message to each of you called Filling Tanks in a Draining World. Steve is a leadership expert. He's a speaker, a writer. He's mentored many, myself included, mentored hundreds and impacted thousands with his message of hope and encouragement and just how to live better. First, before I introduce Steve, I want to mention that our sponsors today are Midlands Biz, midlandsbiz.com. Midlands Biz is an organization, a company run by Alan Cooper and his team, and they bring electronic newsletter to all businesses in the Midlands. It's free. Go to it. Thank you, Alan, for your sponsorship today. Also, Cliff Springs of Genesis Studios provided this place for us today. Cliff is a dear friend and a great collaborative partner of ours. So we thank you, Cliff, for this offering today. Before I turn it over to Steve, I do want to mention that we're all in webinar mode today, so nobody's seeing each other, but we do want to give you an opportunity to ask questions. So we have enabled our chat function here so that you can ask questions throughout Steve's presentation. At the end of his presentation, we're going to give you an opportunity, or we're going to go through those questions and answer those. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our speaker today, Dr. Steve Cloud.
Thanks, Bill. Well, I am glad to be a part of this and look forward to what will come out of this webinar today. I think it's going to be a great experience. One thing for sure, nobody needs to be convinced that it is a draining world right now. I mean, in everything that we see, we certainly feel the drain. COVID has been more severe, more difficult. It has been lasted longer than most of us even expected. So the challenge for us is, how do we, in fact, live in this kind of a draining world? But would you not also agree that the challenge did not begin in March? The data is that school teachers and parents and business owners and leaders and every kind were feeling the stress and strains, the pressures of life long before COVID came this past March. And the challenges are very real for us. So how do we live in this draining world? I mean, it certainly has been a part of our lives, but when you added homeschooling, you took away restaurants, you took away travel, you took away sports, that's draining. When we go through all the crazy changes and the disruption over the last 6 months, and did I mention losing sports? I mean, that's a draining world, and that's our world. But the reality is, most of us don't pause when we're so pushed to get things done to count the cost of what's involved, what's the impact on me. And living with a stress-filled, high expectation world with a half-empty tank has a lot of side effects. So I want you to think for just a second how you see any of those effects in your own life. It's called the Law of Diminishing Returns. So just see if you see some of these characteristics. Number one, you're working harder, but you're enjoying it less. You're finding that you are bringing, you're not your same creative and effective leader. One of the things that's coming out is that decisions are harder. The creativity doesn't flow. It's like our mind gets a mental blank when we're really tired. Another thing is we bring our worst self, both at home and to the team. I mean, irritability is impacted greatly when the tank is empty. And maybe the highest cost is that we're not ready for the next opportunity that's coming. And so we find ourselves in a position where the world is moving on and we've got to get ready. That's why I believe that the value of taking this time is to look at what to do to fill the tanks is key. I saw recently somebody had revisited the 23rd Psalm. See if this sounds at all like you. The clock is my dictator, I shall not rest. It makes me lie down only when exhausted. It leads me into deep depression. It hounds my soul. It leads me in circles of frenzy for activity's sake. And even though I run frantically from task to task, I'll never get it all done, for my ideal is with me. Deadlines and my need for approval, they drive me. They demand performance from me beyond the limits of my schedule. They anoint my head with migraines. My in-basket overflows. Surely fatigue and time pressures shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the bonds of frustration forever. Man, I hope that's not you, but I think it's worth looking carefully at the gauges of your life. The truth is, your personal gauges have warning lights on it. And what you discover, some of us have flashing lights. I mean, you know what that means when your fuel tank is empty. It's also true for some of these other gauges. So it's worth taking the time. Look carefully at the graphic here. Where are you? Everybody's on this scale at some point, and I want you to put your score just mentally. Tired, busy, depleted, something's missing, or on rested, refreshed, renewed, energized. Where are you on that right now? Or look, if you will, at the emotional, spiritual gauge. You think in terms of I'm more anxious or fearful, doubtful, discouraged, or I'm enjoying peace of mind, inner harmony, hope, joyful passion. You can see the difference, but where are you? Then the last gauge that impacts every one of our lives is the relational family gauge. Some people right now are feeling a little lonely, lack of quality time. They need encouragement. They're dealing with disappointment. On the other side is just really enjoying the quality time with friends and family. You got that healthy support, appreciation, and approval. Guys, we can't separate these things in our lives because every one of those impacts every other part of how we lead, how we work, how we get our things done. That's what this seminar is about, is understanding that we must make changes. And how do you do that when life is really difficult? So we're talking today about how to make the changes you need to live the life that you desire. And I'm sure there are a lot of different answers to that, but it's got to include at least solving 4 problems. And there are 4 things I want you to identify in your own plan to how do I make the changes I need. Number 1, there's a lack of clarity. I mean, it's just so easy to drift. Tiredness, busyness kind of pushes us towards vagueness, non-specific goals, non-specific plans. But the problem is that vagueness is powerless. That's why many of the most effective leaders are highly committed to something that some people call the golden hour. I mean, this is the time that is prioritized and is set aside, is protected, because you're focusing on what is most important to you in your life and how you're going to build your plans to get what you need to get done. It's the golden hour. It's called golden because of what it produces, the results that are in it. And there are 3 questions that I would encourage you to ask during this time. Number 1, where am I? Look at the gauge. Where am I with my physical well-being, with my emotions, with my family, with relationships? I mean, you need honesty and accuracy. If you're wired at all like I am, the busier I am and the more stress that I'm under, the more challenging it is to be really honest with where I actually am. If you're married, you've got a great tool that's available for you. There's always somebody that's ready to tell you you're showing some of these signs. You're beginning to experience the law of diminishing return. And the impact of it is starting to show in your life. So start off asking yourself, where am I? and get honest feedback because it's affecting every part of your life. Second thing is you don't just ask where I am, you're asking the question, what do I want? And friends, I'll suggest to you, this may be one of the most important exercises you do. You're defining your 5. It's what is full to you. What does full look like physically, emotionally, spiritually, in your relationships? And because the problem is in our busyness, we lose sight of what we really want and just do the next thing. Maybe you have heard the wise words of King Solomon, where there is no vision, people perish. Or the New Translation say it like this, is that people without a vision are unrestrained. What that means is there's no boundaries. So we just drift. In the midst of the lack of clarity and the vagueness and generalness, our lives just get scattered into the shallow places. And the problem with that is that vagueness is powerless. If you want to make changes in your life, you need clarity, a high definition picture of a high value vision of what you really want. That's where the passion comes from. That's where the energy comes from. And to get there, you've got to take the time to clarify, write it down, review it. What do I really want in the important parts of my life? And then there's the third question, what am I going to do? I mean, this question in that golden hour actually pushes you from this overwhelming general to-do list that you begin to focus on the 3 or 4 things that are the most important things for you to accomplish. It creates a level of clarity and encouragement. And I was impressed recently reading the 2019 book by Anderson and Adams. The title of the book is called Scaling Leadership. These guys have done extensive research. They've worked with some of the best companies around the world. And what they did, they built a list of some 25 extraordinary executives that were leading world-class companies. And they began to study these guys to figure out what do they have in common. You know what they had in common? Every single one of them had a designated, protected, prioritized time where they reflected and evaluated and they planned and they dreamed every morning, every night. It's the golden hour. And guys, if those extraordinary executives are taking the time to do that, it simply says how important clarity is. If you want to get past stuck and move to 2 new levels of productivity, you build a way to build clarity. The second problem that I think that's got to be addressed to move past stuck is the problem of a lack of confidence. You see, living stuck drains confidence. All these things are related. As a matter of fact, when you are lose hope, you stop dreaming, you stop planning with confidence. And this is an incredibly important part to moving forward in your life. So my question this morning is, how do you build hope, confidence in your life? I mean, what's the source of your confidence? And is your source enough to provide that expectation of success for the challenges that you're currently facing? You're identifying what they are, and you're asking yourself, do I have enough confidence to face those challenges with positive expectation? For me personally, I really cannot completely separate my hope factor, confidence factor from my faith in God. But people who are with other positive people who are reading things that inspire them, it makes all the difference in the world when they are building that hope. And I'll tell you another thing that really will help you with the hope factor, and that is simply you start making progress, incremental progress in some of these areas, and hope builds. I believe actually 10% of improvement, starts releasing the highest octane fuel in the world, and that's your hope factor. So work for clarity, build and strengthen the hope factor, the confidence factor in your life. The third thing that is required is that you solve the problem of a lack of commitment. I'm sure you can already see the relationship between clarity and hope and commitment. But one of the crises that we have in this world, it is in fact a crisis of commitment. Every one of us have certain areas that are difficult to deal with, changes to make. And they may vary from person to person, but our tendency is we keep saying, hey, I'm going to get around to that. Or we put it on a New Year's resolution, or we say to ourselves, I'll have that on my to-do list. But the problem is we keep procrastinating. We're pushing it down to the bottom, and we're not getting to it. And what's happening is we're training our mind and we're training our will to live stuck. The more I live with those lack of action areas, the more I empower them, the more difficult it is to change. So you say, well, how do I make those changes? I would suggest to you that a commitment is where it starts. This comes out of the 17th century. It's a German author by the name of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. But listen very carefully to these words. He says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy or the chance to draw back. But the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves in. Whatever you can do or dream, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. Or maybe you're familiar with the advertisement from Nike that says, just do it. My encouragement today, every one of us have some of these areas that are hard to change. So what do? We clarify what we desperately desire. What has that value to you? You can see that high definition, high value vision of something that is worth the commitment. And then you identify progressively what you can do. You're committing not just to perfection, but to progress. Perfection overwhelms, but progress encourages. So you're committing to specific action steps that begin that progress that leads to encouragement. My challenge for you today is you identify what you need to change. You build a clear vision of what it could be. You let that hope grow, and you commit to specific action steps. Now, if this sounds kind of familiar to you, it's like Vince Lombardi saying to professional football players at the beginning of a season, gentlemen, this is a football. But it's worth noting that those 25 exceptional executives live by this process because it is the key to making the changes you want to make. There's one more that I think is a problem for many. Matter of fact, it may be one of the greatest problems to making some significant, difficult changes. And the fourth problem is a lack of support. According to Dr. Henry Cloud, who's a psychologist, he is a prolific author, he is a business consultant, he's a tremendous coach. His statement is that moving beyond prideful independence, it's a do-it-myself attitude, and getting the support you need is the key to making difficult changes. And friends, we grew up in America where we so pride this independence that the element of reaching out to get help is sometimes hard for us. And yet what I would remind you of, that personal coaching has grown exponentially since the early 90s. And the reason why it has had that phenomenal growth is because it directly addresses the 4 factors that fuel living stuck. Having a coach walk alongside of you helps to clarify that vision that inspires, that empowers. It strengthens hope, confidence in your life. It always will lead to that commitment toward the action steps that will take you forward, that you actually can do. And that support leads to transformation. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's as much of 70% difference when training is followed by personal coaching for those very reasons. And I would tell you that's the genius of TAB. TAB is this group for business owners. It's a peer learning environment where business owners meet with other guys who are gals. They're motivated to grow. They're getting creative feedback. They're getting insights. They're in an environment that reinforces vision and commitment. And they've got a personal coach that walks alongside of them. And what I would suggest, if you want your team to succeed, it is imperative that the people you're working with have somebody that's helping them to take these steps. Again, listen to a quote by Anderson and Adams from Scaling Leadership. It says, the organization will never perform at a higher level than the collective effectiveness of its senior team. So do you want your team to soar? And do you want to move from where you are to that life you ultimately desire? Then know where you are. Clarify what you really want. Identify what you're going to do. Think progress, not perfection. And make a commitment. Take action now and get the support you need. In fact, if I could just summarize it all before Bill comes back, I would tell you 3 key things. Number 1, commit to that golden hour. I mean, your golden hour actually may just take 20 minutes, but I would encourage you to commit yourself that I'm going to prioritize and protect time beginning now, no matter how busy I am. It's worth going to bed earlier. It's worth getting up earlier, but I'm going to dream and focus on what I really want and the action steps I need to take that's going to help me to get there. Secondly, if you're a business owner, give serious consideration to being a part of a TAB board. It's life-changing. I mean, it is an environment. I think one of the things that says the most is the average stay for a TAB board members is 8 years. And it's not just in America, it's internationally also. And then the third thing is get help. Find the support you need. It's been said many times, but you will go further, faster, and longer when you've got a personal coach that's working with you. Now, we're going to send a copy of this Gauges to everybody who's registered for the webinar. And Bill is coming back and we'll talk about any of the things that have come up during it. But I just want to encourage you, do something today. If you're tired of feeling a little drained, take the step that leads to a full tank. Thank you. Bill?
Hey, thank you, Steve. It's live TV. Wow, good job. Thank you so much. Hey, we did get a couple of questions here so far, but I want to remind everybody the chat function is open. So if you'd like to ask a question of Steve, just type it in there. But here's one. You mentioned Dr. Henry Cloud. He's written a ton of books. Somebody says, are you related to Dr. Henry Cloud?
Yeah, I always want to claim he's my rich uncle, but I hadn't gotten in the will so far. No, I'm not actually, but I certainly admire the guy's intellect.
Yeah, well, that's good. But here's a serious question. Steve says, I've got so many things I need to change. I don't know where to start. What's your advice for someone like me?
Well, I think that is a great question. And I think that's actually true for most of us. I think working with a coach helps you to prioritize. You can't do it all at once. So how do you get started And that's really what I would encourage, is that you identify what's most important and that you build a plan to take action.
Yeah, good. Thank you. If we have any other questions, we'll keep our eye on this chat screen here. But you mentioned Tab, and I remember, Tab was that 1-calorie cola that my grandmother used to have in her refrigerator. And I think it was loaded up with saccharin, and they took it off because it was killing rats. But anyway, I had never heard of Tab, the alternative board, until about 2.5 years ago. And I found out that it's been around for 30 years, that they've got over 4,000 members worldwide. And a friend of mine called me up. He says, Bill, he says, I know you got your own coaching company with North Star. I tell you, this has got your name on it. So when I looked at it and saw what it was, a chance for men and women business owners, non-competing business owners, to get together once a month and work on their business, not just in it, and to build a community. He said, Bill, it's got your name on it. I said, yeah, it does have my name on it. So I checked it out, found out it was real, and it's been a great experience ever since then. And Steve is actually leading, he's one of our facilitators who leads a group like this. We have another individual that's just starting a board now. In fact, Steve, we're starting our 4th board right now. And that's going to be led by Diane Sass. And Diane Sass is an HR professional who's got over 30 years in the business. And it's neat to be able to sit around the table with other men and women who run businesses that are from all different areas. And we've got attorneys, and we've got CPAs, we've got HR professionals, we've got commercial contractors, we've got creative people like Cliff that has Genesis Studios here, and Alan Cooper. So it's a great experience. But one of the things that's been my hallmarks for at least the last 5 years since I launched my own coaching consulting practice is that people need 3 things. And Steve, you've hit on every single one of them today. First of all, I believe, and I like to call them the 3 C's. Number 1 is C. Everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs a coach. And that coach could be somebody you pay. And I know that when I came to Columbia 12 years ago, I hired this guy right here. And he was my coach, and he's really helped me out a lot. And, you could have a coach that maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a friend, but you got to have somebody cheering you on. You mentioned that encouragement, Steve, is so necessary. And then the second thing is community. Everybody needs a community, especially in the world we're living right now. We've got, it's great to have a community on video, but it's just not the same as getting together with people regularly. And, lots of places that you normally gather aren't meeting anymore right now. So you need a coach, you need a community. And the third thing is you need a course of action. You need a plan. You need to do something. And we have a saying at North Star, we said, you've got to get clear, get focused, and get going. You've got to do something. You've got to get out of those firing blocks. So Steve, did you have anything else you wanted to say as we wrap it up here?
Well, I just think the fact that TAB is the epitome of these core principles that are universally agreed on. But the challenge is, I mean, like for myself, when I am so task oriented, I can go from task to task to task. I'm not aware of exactly where I am and what I'm feeling until I hit the wall. And it's, I should learn that before now. And just those core principles, TAB helps people to move forward faster. I love it.
Yeah, great. Now you shared the gauges. We want you to know that we've got some of the things that Steve talked about. You've got those gauges. We've got a self-assessment. We're going to send that out to you. So if you registered for the webinar today, seminar, whatever you want to call it, if you registered for that today, we have your information. However, if you did not register, somebody shared the link with you, that's perfectly fine. We're glad you're here, but just know we don't have your contact information. So if you would send an email to bill@tabcolumbia.com, bill@tabcolumbia.com, and we'll make sure that you get the things that Steve covered, along with a couple of other pieces of information that we think you'll find helpful.
Great.
So let me wrap it up here. Once again, thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for being a mentor and a coach to me and a fellow colleague. I always get inspired from being around Steve and hearing Steve. And I hope you have a great day. I hope you get clear, get focused, and get going. And if we can help you, just remember, we are here to help you. We want to help you
make the changes you need to live the life you desire. So have a great rest of the week. Thank you.